Hey, this is ben.llywelyn, and today I've got a short but meaningful and important video for you in terms of the content, and the subject is one that we, being in Celtic Nations, Brittany, Cornwall, Wales, the Isle of Mann, Scotland, Ireland, need to talk about. This idea of Celtic nationalism, and something that it's doing that I think is really damaging to all of our nations, which has within it a few different subjects that we need to address. And that's what this video is going to be about. Let's go. Today I'd like to go through a few comments that we've received on this channel and point out something that Celtic nationalists really need to stop if we're going to promote our cultures and, more importantly, our languages. So let's have a few comments and take a look at those. So the first one: if you are Breton, you are not French. What are you doing? You can be Welsh and Scottish, so why can't you be Breton and French? I married an Englishman a while back, and why couldn't, if that had continued, why couldn't I have been Welsh and English? I'm Welsh and American, so why can't you be Breton and French? That's not a contradiction we want to impose on people who are open to absorbing and becoming part of the different cultures of these different 6 Celtic nations. And that attitude of saying you're one or the other, so stop. Before I go into the next 3 comments, I need to explain something called the Celtic Union. Now look at this map here. This is utterly absurd. People wanting to unite the Celtic nations in a union, I don't know if it's economically or cultural or what, and then take bits out of England so that they're connected by land. And what I have to say to them is, grow up, because we have other things to deal with, more important factors to begin a journey on for the people we want to be. And for that Celtic Union to exist, what would the de facto language be? Would it be this language I'm speaking now? English? Isn't that another imposition? I don't think those who have suggested this have thought it through properly. And in fact, we as Celtic nations, we in Wales have more in common culturally with France than we do with Ireland. I know that's going to be contentious to some, but just on the other side of Abertawe there, Swansea, there's an Eric Coed Frank, the tree or the wood of the Frenchman, where the Normans advanced to, and these have deeply imprinted our names, our language, our culture. Our heritage is Norman Welsh in many places. And so this Celtic Union idea is far too simplistic. Take a look at this comment. Brothers, each region in UK should have your own Celtic language. Point 1. Point 2. Scots Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, Welsh, Cornish, Breton, Manx, Lepontic should be united in one pan-Celtic to reunite UK and Ireland in a Celtic language. That's the solution to our Celtic's lands. I need to bring up a few things on that one. First of all, Lepontic. Let's talk about the languages, the Celtic languages which are alive. Lepontic is, not only is it ancient, but that's like 1,000 miles away from so-called Celtic-speaking communities. Reunite the UK with Ireland. I don't think many Irishmen in the Republic would be so fond of that idea. It might be a bit good of an idea to be a bit more sensitive to the harm that has gone on between these 2 islands over these centuries in the Celtic language. And which the Celtic language would that be? There are 6 as far as I'm aware, and I'm not going to have another language imposed upon Wales. We speak Welsh and English. What language do you refer to? And then the solution. If you know anything about the history of Turkish relations with Armenia, we don't need to name the biggest one in terms of solutions in the 20th century, do we? We don't need to speak in terms of solutions with other nations. It's too reminiscent of ghosts. Very interesting. Well, thank you. I hope a Celtic Union in the EU or EFTA will be the next step for Scotland, Ireland and Wales. I understand your hopes there of wanting to go back into the European Union. I'm not taking a side on Brexit on this channel, but a Celtic Union within the EU doesn't really make too much sense in my opinion. I'm not going to be too harsh there because I kind of understand where you're coming from, but you also then note Wales, Scotland and Ireland. Well, what about Brittany and Cornwall and Man? And we can do so much more when we forget this notion of Celtic as some kind of nation group. Because I consider myself as a Welshman to be Brythonic rather than Celtic, and we're much closer to the English in Wales. I know a lot of people will boo me for that, but we're much closer to being English than we are to being Irish, in my opinion, in many ways. That's just fact. I'm sorry, we're on the same island, and we've intermarried for so many centuries. I know that's a bit of a jagged pill for many Celtic nationalists, but Celtic is not really a thing. It's a romanticization. Next, Celtic Union, a Celtic nation reborn. Wales, Cornwall, Ireland, Isle of Mann and Scotland together with a centralised governance. Welsh and Cornish should be taught in all high schools all over England as it is the native languages of our islands. A Celtic nation. Whoa, hold your horses there. What does that mean? I mean, I'm not the same nation as Scotland. There is no a Celtic nation. That seems quite imperialistic. Who will be the culture of this Celtic nation? Will it be Irish? Will it be Welsh? I mean, well, that might be good for us. Do we get to take over Scotland and Cornwall? But what about them? They're going to lose out a bit on that, aren't they? When was a singular Celtic nation in existence? It can't rebirth itself if it never existed. But what gets me here most is centralized governance. No. That is what we're fighting against, as it were, now, to keep our languages alive from. We don't want another one, because centralized government always leads to one language being predominant. The reason why multilingualism works so well in Switzerland is because of decentralization. Decentralization would be a very strong suit for us to wear. However, I do agree with you. Teach Welsh and Cornish in England. That would be beneficial to all on this island, I believe, and it would help teach many in England about what a nation actually is, and that we're not here to erase you merely by proclaiming our existence. We want to celebrate each country on this island. The next comment. Wales should be for the Welsh, period. If you leave England, maybe you're of Welsh ancestry or whatever. If I were king, Wales would require immigrants, English people, to take basic classes or get the out. Where do I begin? Wales is for the Welsh, but we have a big croeso. Welcome. We don't act like that. We don't say that. No. If you leave England, maybe you're of Welsh ancestry or whatever. That suggests that you don't have any or much good faith in English people who try to have good faith with you. There are many good English people who try to understand our culture, and we should embrace that kernel of illumination which will help us. If I were King of Wales, well, it's a good thing that you're not, because people who want to be king so ardently seldom should be king. And judging by your last words, I suppose I'm right. Get the out. No. The next comment. Wales and Cornwall should unite. After that, they should reconquer England, the lost land, and re-Celticize it. May as well take out Scotland. They used to be P-Celtic too, you just need to take it all back. Now I get this one was written more in a jest, a joking fashion, that's fair enough, but as much as I would say to Cornish people, the survival of any British nation to continue might as well learn Welsh, I wouldn't go so far as to say Cornwall and Wales unite. We can certainly support one another. I see where you're coming from, but I do have Scottish ancestry. Let's not attack Scotland. That's not very nice. Take them out. I don't think they would just let you. They're a bit of hardy folk up there. We have enough of our own problems. Reviving Welsh and Cornish across our two nations will be hard enough as it is. And then we can worry about those other things, but it's a bit much to think about now. As for England being the lost land, yes, it is, but that is a bit how Russia sees Ukraine. Let's not go there. Next. The Welsh are not Celts. We have Hebrew, Trojan, Anatolian migration history. It is written by our saints, Ninnius Gildas. The Irish are Scythian, and so are the Scottish. You can't tell a peoples that they have been in their territory for 3,500 years that their history is wrong. Oh, where do I begin? No, we've not been here for 3,500 years. The people who were here that far back, we don't know who they were. The peoples of Stonehenge and all that, and these stones. Cavendish, we don't know what languages they were speaking. We don't know their tribal affiliations or their cultural identity. But what we do know, as far as the Welsh, the Hebrew notion has been disproven over and over. The Trojan immigration myth was medieval propaganda, and might I add, it was medieval propaganda in some senses against the Welsh, because hidden in that was this ridiculous myth that we always enquiry, to bicker with oneself and fight each other, which is not only is it not true, but it's everyone's truth. All peoples fight each other. The fact that this is some type of exceptionalism for the Welsh, again, is wrong. And I don't know where you're getting this Hebrew immigration story. There was a brief period in the 1700s when people thought such things potentially, but that's a romanticism we can't afford to entertain anymore. And as for the Scythians, no. It's just not true. There are quite a few videos on YouTube entertaining the notion, but what makes Wales and Scotland and Ireland so rich is not who the original foundations were, but the accumulation of influences since. We in Wales, like I said about Norman French influence, that is a deep layer of our culture. We are a fusion between Roman and British. We have sprinklings of Irish and Viking. We have Flemish, and recently Italian and Polish, and lots of English and Saxon too. This concentration of attention on where ancient peoples come from deludes what they are now. Because whatever our foundations, each one of these Celtic nations is different in composition over the centuries and time, and going back to that notion of a Celtic Union. That's why such a thing so abhors me. It consolidates us into some type of singular identity which forgets what makes us so unique, and the fact that when Native American groups meet under the banner of Native American, they lose the fact that all these cultures, the Mohican, the Navajo, the Cherokee, the Sioux, the Shawnee, the Hopi, the Salish, these peoples are as different from one another, in some cases, as Kazakhs and Portuguese. And we, in these Celtic nations, in some instances, Scotland is much more Germanic in its foundation than Wales. Certainly, Breton, they have a deeper Latin imprint than any of the others, and Irish is something else again. What is Celtic nationalism? Because our nations are not the same. Stop turning my country into a fantasy for your needing some kind of cultish identity to belong to. If you want to belong to something, choose a specific nation. Join it and become part of one of those layers that is built over the centuries, and forget this original bedrock being some type of holy temple to purity. Well, thank you for making it this far. That's very appreciated. If you'd like to support this channel, I'll put a Patreon link below, and here are the Patreons who currently support me on the screen now. Your donation is very much appreciated.